Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast. It's friends occasionally not disagreeing. This is Cody, and I'm here with another of my James Bond watch along series. You can check out the film Moonraker today in just a minute here. As mentioned, my summer is quickly dwindling, and this episode will drop on Friday, and on Monday, I am back to school. Not with students quite yet till Wednesday, but we are close as I record this. I'm going to try to at least get through the Roger Moore films here recorded before I go back to school, which I think there's two more after this. And then we'll get into Timothy Dalton after that some point. If you hear any bing bang booms or other drumming noises in the background, this is because I'm recording today in my car, which I have done a couple times on these outside of my children's music studio where there is a lot of loud drumming going on at the moment, but I think it'll be pretty isolated. So hopefully this will work out okay. But if you do hear anything around me, apologies. Bringing these to you any way I can with my time schedule the way it is. And let's talk about Moonraker. So I feel like I have a lot to say about this one because this one had a reputation, I think, in the Pantheon going through as being kind of a negative movie to begin with. But I was intrigued to see if that was going to be true or not. The Roger Moore movies I mentioned in the previous podcast have a reputation for more and more sci-fi and wacky gadgetry and space lasers and all those types of things. And we actually get space lasers in this film, amongst many other things in here as well. So does this live up to its reputation? Is it better than that? Is this classic or is this crap? We left off our series, the last couple here, just to remind everybody, the Roger Moore films, Live and Let Die, actually had our second highest score so far. The Man with the Golden Gun comes in at our third highest score so far. And The Spy Who Loved Me, the last one, just barely got crap status if you happen to check out that episode. So let's talk about Moonraker. We're at the end of the 70s. I believe this is 1979 that this comes out commercially. And Roger Moore is back again for his fourth outing as Bond. He's got two more after this. Then we'll get the bizarre reemergence of Sean Connery in that second of the non-Eon productions with Never Say Never Again. And then Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and then finally Daniel Craig towards the end down here. Okay, so Moonraker, title of this film and the theme of this film. Let's talk about it. We have a series of ships called Moonrakers. Essentially, this is a plane shuttle, space shuttle combo that can take things into space. Some of these are blown up at the beginning of the movie, and I thought maybe that was going to be the only mention of these for so long, but the title does come back in later on. And so it's kind of, I don't know, it's there, I guess, to insinuate what's happening as they're heading out into space. The moon, which I actually kind of figured would be a factor in this movie based on the title, is actually not even in anything to do with this. So I don't love the title of this one. I'll be honest. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. Doesn't really connect and show any importance, I don't think, of anything. Rough start. Let's see if it gets better. On to our theme music. This one started, and for some reason, I guess I had forgot that Shirley Bassey is back for a third song on this one. We had Goldfinger, one of those early ones, which was so good. We had Diamonds Are Forever with her back again, so good. And then we have Moonraker, sung by Shirley Bassey here in this one. Well, I think I can confidently say that it's the worst of the three, but in terms of how good of a Bond theme is it, I went back and forth a long time on this one, to be quite frank, because it has like this weird, wacky background disco beat going on as this is happening. Really reminiscent of the exact year, 79, that this is in. It's not Shirley Bassey's best work in this series. That is obvious, but I think a lot of it is the song that she was given to sing here. I think for her performance, I think is still really strong in this one, but she's not given a lot to sing in this, unfortunately. This is going to go down as one of our worst themes so far in the 12 movies we've checked out, and definitely the worst of the Shirley Bassey themes. I was joking earlier that Everything this lady does sounds good. I have no idea what else this lady sings beyond the Bond themes. But I owe it to myself, and maybe you owe it to yourself to go out there and see what else she has done because, as I was joking, she could sing just about any chore or hobby or mundane situation in her voice and would probably sound amazing. 6 out of 10 for our theme on this one. Sorry, Shirley, wasn't your fault. I promise. Rough start here for today on Moonraker. Oh, 5 categories to go, and we are well off the pace already in this one. So it's got to be terrible, right? Let's find out. Portrayal of Bond in this one. This is our fourth outing, as mentioned by Roger Moore. And compared to the last one, The Spy Who Loved Me, I actually thought he did quite a bit better in this one. His performance seems more solid. His lines seem to bite a little bit more and are given with a little more emotion. He seems to pack his punches pretty good in the fight scenes. There's a lot of stunts where you could tell from some cutaways and faraway shots, Roger Moore's not there at the time, but there's plenty of close-up ones where he is. And so he should be commended for all those moments where he does his own work as well. Interactions with other characters I thought were good in this movie as well. Whether it's a random person or one of the other bigger characters in this film, I think this guy just handles himself very good in this movie. And I'm going to give this guy a 13 out of 15, actually, for Roger Moore's portrayal of Bond. Much better than the last movie. Okay, women and villains are up next, and a lot to say about both of these. As far as the women in this film, there was a lady early in this film. See if I didn't even catch her name in the movie. Let me see here if I can find it for us quick. We have Corinne Dufour is her name. I thought she was quite attractive and was a nice little foil who gives into Bond as well. And that's the character I would have loved to have seen for the rest of this movie. Unfortunately, she gets eaten by the villain's pet dogs in this film, his Dobermans, and that's all we're going to see of her. The real Bond lady in this movie is the eponymous Holly Goodhead. Holly Goodhead, which could be the worst name since Pussy Galore or Honey Rider, way back at the beginning of this run. Holly is somebody who, much like Hayden Christensen, probably could have used an acting class or two. I hate to rip on her performance, but she delivers lines with the authenticity of a piece of wood. She's about as exciting as watching the rain fall down when you're looking out the window. And there's not much else I can say about her from her delivery standpoint. She was boring as hell. Maybe one of the worst people so far. Ursula Andress does a better job, and she can barely speak English for crying out loud. Oh, I really wish they had reversed these two females that they cast in the movie. It would have worked a lot better for me as a viewer. I don't know. Perhaps this is someone famous. I'm not even sure who plays Holly Goodhead, but she was rough. So you would think she's going to get a low score, and she deserves one based on how she delivers all her lines. And I know she's trying to pretend she's CIA and she's aloof from Bond and an unlikely ally and all that crap plot-wise, but she just delivers her lines so badly. But I will say this about her. Unlike many of the women so far that we have seen in these movies, Holly Goodhead does pretty damn good at her stunts. She's a capable fighter. She has judo throws. She throws fist to fist. She's using weapons. She's using guns. She's jumping on things and climbing on things and all sorts of other methods of transportation throughout this movie. She handles her own. I mean, she loses to greater foes like Jaws, for example. We'll talk about him in a second. But really, the stunt work and the physical effort that this person puts in was pretty impressive. It's kind of some of the stuff I have been harping on for some of these people earlier in this series who can't do a damn thing themselves. But here we have somebody who is capable of doing all those things, does most of those things, impressing me as the viewer, but she is just so terrible delivering her lines. So I have to balance all that out. And unfortunately for our friend Holly Goodhead, she is going to get a 10 out of 15, which actually puts her right about in the middle of the pack, give or take, from the movies so far. So despite the inability to take a middle school acting class for this lady, she is actually pretty dang good as a stunt woman, as it turns out. I have to wonder if maybe that's how this person was cast. Again, I don't know. I didn't even bother to look up who this person was. Um, guess I could do that quickly here, but Lois Childs, let's see, former actress and fashion model. But as far as stunt work, fine. As far as um the other stuff, not so great. She's still active, it says, or she stopped working in 2006, but is still around with us. All right, on to the villains. We get a new villain here in the intro to this one. Well, actually, in the intro, we get Jaws back, which I thought was kind of cool because we're going to have a recurring villain other than Blofeld go from movie to movie, which I was definitely on board with that. And Jaws is fighting Bond in the beginning of this movie, and eventually Bond gets away. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. This is a pretty sweet little flight scene, which I had a couple in this movie actually. But Jaws is back, and then he looks like he's going to die, but of course he does not die again. So it's kind of cool because they are making him like this impervious foe who just keeps coming back from the dead. But the real villain we find out very quickly after that is this guy named Drax, which immediately makes me think of Guardians of the Galaxy, of course. But this one was around presumably earlier. That would be a tough call. This is 1979. And the comic book character of Drax, I don't know the debut of that, but certainly film wise was decades later. He's an interesting villain. He's, again, very cocky, rich person, which seems to be the case in almost all of these movies. He is somebody who looks different than the other villains we've had so far. I was joking in our group chat offline here on social media that he looks like a larger version of Peter Dinklage with a pretty sweet little goatee and facial features that kind of seem similar. But I also remarked, I don't know that we've had a bearded villain so far in any of these movies that I can recall. And as I'm looking back through all of these past villains on my list here, I don't recall any of them having a beard. So that's kind of interesting too. It took 12 movies for us to get a bearded villain. Drax is throughout the movie smarter maybe a little bit than the typical Bond villain, and at times seems to fall into the same tropey, stupid decisions that many of the previous Bond villains have chosen. You know, for example, he has a scene at his chalet where Bond is almost killed by a sniper and other methods, and it's like in one scene, the guy is literally holding a gun. Like if he wanted Bond to die, he could just shoot him. They emphasize that Drax is into hunting quite a bit and he likes a good sporting challenge. So I guess that's how we're going to write off the fact that he doesn't do that to Bond throughout this movie. At one point later in the movie, he even says something along the lines of, wouldn't be sporting or you're not being sporting, Mr. Bond, or something like that. So he's interesting, but he does kind of fall into some of those same type of problems that the earlier villains have had. Not overly compelling, despite how he's initially introduced, which I was kind of intrigued by this guy when they first put him on screen, but didn't turn out to be that way towards the end, I would guess. He just kind of kept falling further and further down the typical villain hole. Now, the other villain in this movie we do need to spend some time on is our boy Jaws. Dun, dun, chomp, chomp. Jaws, I like in this movie pops up like maybe 3 different times. This is just a guess. I'm not looking at the plot yet, but to kill Bond or Bond and Holly. And he's menacing. He's shown to be, impervious to pain and blah blah blah. But Bond keeps finding ways to slow him down. In many ways, he's like Nemesis or Tyrant from Resident Evil, if you will. But I love that he was back for this second movie. I love that they had one of those kind of cool side character henchmen type people who were back for another one. I kind of wish Oddjob had stuck around for another movie, for example, but he died in his movie. And even Wint and Kid from Diamonds Are Forever would have been fantastic to come back. Um, but they have a tendency to mostly kill off these villains, with the exception of Blofeld. I guess Baron Samedi didn't die, but I'm not thinking we're going to see him back again. I would be surprised. Pretty awesome if we did, but I don't think we will. Um, there's a point in the movie, though, where Jaws is. He meets this random girl, and instantly it's love at first sight. And she's like half as tall as he is because the guy's so huge. And it's just really interesting because we see this other side of Jaws come over himself, and suddenly he cares about this new person, and he's an unwilling lackey for Drax after that. And then finally, for the last maybe, 25 minutes of the movie, maybe 20 minutes of the movie, he is full on hero, which also was kind of cool, to be quite honest, to see a villain turn hero, because I don't know that we've seen that in this movie yet either, other than a lady that Bond has seduced. Because, of course, who can resist his masculine wiles that he has, this stench and smell of a muskox that just seems to really draw you in. It's like the gravity of a larger planet that you encounter. All right, and moving on. So this is a problem. I love Jaws, but he's only a villain for part of the movie, and then he turns good. So how good can a villain be if he turns good? I was conflicted on how to score this one. Jaws maybe has a better performance here than he did in the first one. He certainly gets more screen time here. And as I mentioned, Drax was kind of all over the place with how much I enjoyed him. But averaging this all up, we're going to give the villains in this one 7 out of 10. They both had what would give them a high score here, and they both have what would give them a low score. But I'm going to average them out-ish. 7 out of 10 for a combination of Drax and Jaws in Moonraker. Okay, on to action in the plot. I think what I will do with this is check out the plot first, because then it kind of summarizes some of the action that we see in this movie as well. Okay, so we have a Drax Moonraker space shuttle that's being loaned to the United Kingdom and is hijacked while they're up in midair. And then the plane that was carrying it is destroyed, but no wreckage of the shuttle is ever found afterwards. This is kind of the mystery. We get M to send Bond out to investigate. He goes to England first, where he is attacked and pushed out of an airplane by Jaws. He steals a pilot's parachute as he's falling, which was, I know our host Joe enjoys a lot of the stunts in Mission Impossible, and this kind of gave me like way earlier than Mission Impossible type vibes. This is not Tom Cruise, but I actually thought this whole scene in the air with them fighting on the way down and stealing the parachute and everything else, assuming that that was filmed for real, since this is 1979 and not CGI, hats off. That's a pretty fantastic scene to start the movie with, I have to say. Jaws his parachute doesn't open, and so he falls, and I thought, oh, they're going to kill Jaws off in the opening scene. No, he falls on a circus which has a trapeze net in it, which, collapses but saves him from the fall, of all things, if you can believe that. Okay, this is where Bond goes to Drax headquarters in California, and he meets the owner, Hugo Drax, which is a pretty cool little name for a villain. And I forgot, he had a second henchman in this movie called Chang, who is a bizarre Asian man who attacks with a rattan cane, a la like pro wrestlers do for the last 25 years. So that was kind of surreal as well. Bond also sees Dr. Holly Goodhead here, who is an astronaut and also a scientist. Bond enters into part of the astronaut training program. I don't know if this is just to show off their services or to prove how tough he is, It's like a giant centrifuge and a helicopter essentially, and Bond is whipped around and around and around while the G's go up in force. This is because Chang tries to kill him in there, but Bond uses one of his devices to explode the helicopter and barely make it out. Then we get the little cameo here by Corinne Dufour, who is working for Drax as well. This is Drax's personal pilot, and they find a glass vial and some blueprints. But this trail is going to lead Bond to Venice at this point. And unfortunately for Dufour, she's killed, as I mentioned here, by Drax and his dogs at that point. So we get a setting change here. We're going to go to Venice now, which I can't remember, but I almost kind of feel like has been used once or twice already in these movies. But we're going to head to Venice, and Bond finds Goodhead, who is kind of snooping around, and he is also snooping around. He finds out eventually here that she is part of the CIA eventually. And we find out that these glass vials have a deadly nerve gas in them, which is lethal to humans, but completely, harmless to plants and animals. And, deduce and do the math here with this. We have a device which is going to supposedly kill off the human population while leaving the plants and animals alive. Although that's not said or explicitly said for a long fucking time in this movie, because you kind of rag on the movies when the bad guy gives away the plot. It was a long damn time into this movie before you knew what the plot was for sure. That's good to count against it, everybody. All right. Okay, Chang fights Bond here, and Bond eventually throws him through this huge stained glass window clock type thing, which is awesome. And he finds that Drax is moving his operation to Rio de Janeiro. All right. And now he and Goodhead are going to go off to Rio to find Drax in his operation. Okay. Jaws, who is now working for Drax, is Chang's replacement, it says in this note here on Wikipedia, which I did not realize if that's how that lines up. Apparently, Jaws was just operating by himself at the beginning of this film. They get there, of course, during the Carnival in Rio, because, of course, for you to go there, it has to be the most exciting time of the year, right? And we have a cable car scene, which was kind of fun. Another little set piece here with Bond and Goodhead trapped on one cable car and Jaws moving toward them on another, fight ensuing on both of the two of them. Jaws using his strength and his metal teeth to bite through cables. And then Bond and Goodhead riding a chain over the cord of the gondolas of the cable cars, if you will, very far down, and then jumping while, of course, Jaws, again, his cable car smashes into the building, but he survives. And it is here where he is pulled out of the rubble by Dolly, who is a young woman, and suddenly his new love of his life. Meanwhile, Goodhead's captured, but Bond escapes. And we find out that the toxin from this apparent vial of poison or nerve gas or whatever you want to call it comes from the Amazon jungle. It's an orchid that's from there. So we're going to go from, this is what I'm talking about with these movies. Like, do we need all this? I don't know, maybe. So we're in the United Kingdom. We're in England. We're headed to California. We've gone to Venice. We're headed to Rio. Now we need to go to the Amazon. All right. Bond goes to the Amazon. He's attacked by Drax's forces. Jaws captures Bond and takes him, and we see here the big shift of the movie when all of the giant Moonraker shuttles are lifting off for something in space. And Drax says that he was the one that stole the initial Moonraker shuttle because he needed a replacement for his own operation that he is carrying out. All right. So Bond and Goodhead pose as pilots on Moonraker 6, which is the last of the 6 ships heading up to space. And we find out that there is a giant space station in outer space, a la something out of the Marvel universe, which nobody can see on radar because it is being hidden by a cloaking device that's shielding it from Earth, essentially. And here I will say the movie doesn't disappoint because you have to think the movie title, Moonraker, has something to do with space, and we finally are going to get to that part here. We start off with Bond and Goodhead, who are now on the space station jamming the cloaking device, which now means the people at Earth, particularly NASA in the United States, can send apparently a shuttle at will because apparently they had that technology in 1979, but we don't anymore. And they are going to instantly send up a giant company of Marines, but not just Marines, friggin' Space Marines, yo. This is what Donald Trump was running on, part of his platform. Space Force. Okay, well, Bond captures Goodhead and I'm sorry, Jaws captures Bond and Goodhead, I should say. And then we're gonna figure out here that Drax was only transporting genetically perfect young men and young women of various races to come up and live in the giant space station until the Earth was basically fit for humans to come back down, and they would have a master race that would go back and repopulate the planet. Bond points out to Drax that anyone who's not perfect is going to be killed, and this he uses to persuade Jaws, realizing that both he and his new lady friend, who is kind of a short, glasses-wearing person, would not be considered perfect, and therefore this is what finally causes Jaws to attack Drax and his guards as well. And we're going to get a laser battle, which could rival the best days of the 80s G.I. Joe cartoon, pew, 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 or Star Wars, which is, roughly around this time as well. These are not the stormtroopers, though. There's people being killed everywhere. I'm not seeing any burns or blood or anything on anybody, but apparently these space lasers just instantly kill you when you get hit by them. So we get giant fleets of space marines versus Drax's forces, with Bond and Jaws and Goodhead in the middle, and Drax running around and all kinds of crazy things happening here on this scene. I mean, this scene was so chaotic. This could have been part of that final montage scene from Casino Royale, the old version. I mean, there's just shit happening everywhere on this one. Oh, boy. Eventually, Drax's forces are defeated. The station starts to blow up. Bond evacuates Drax into space, where I'm sure he'll get a nice cold death very quickly. And we have Jaws saving them by helping them disengage the Moonraker ship that they were on. They switched over to the one that was Drax's because they had a laser, the Moonraker 5. And Jaws and Dolly stay on the space station, but apparently find some sort of escape pod, which is not really mentioned until that moment, which was kind of weird. Looked like they were going to give up their lives and die, and then suddenly they are reported to be coming back to Earth. So that was kind of bizarre. And then we get Bond and Goodhead chasing down the 3 globes that have been launched with this poison towards Earth. That's pretty dramatic. Chasing them down as their own spaceship shuttle is burning up, heading into the Earth's atmosphere. They get 1, they get 2, they get the 3rd one. They save the day, and then they kind of float up in space. Well, once they are there, this is going to end with you get another Bond seducing a lady in some sort of a ship. This time it's a spaceship, though, so a little bit of variety there, I suppose. But anyway, all of the people from both, boy, I forget if it's the UK and America and Russia, I don't remember, all get a video feed from the Moonraker 5, which I don't know why that's there now that I think about it. But anyway, they see Bond and Goodhead, who are now having sex up in zero gravity, which sounds challenging as I think about this a little bit more. But anyway, holy cow, that was a long overview of the plot in this movie. There's a lot going on. So, plot, let's do the plot score first. 18 out of 30. I actually went pretty low on this for a couple reasons. And it's actually one of our lower ones we've had so far this whole time. Number one, we're just bouncing around a lot again on this like wild goose chase of breadcrumb trails trying to find what the actual mystery is in this movie. It's almost more like a detective movie with all the spots this guy has to stop to find clues. Secondly, okay, he gets this vial and we get some inclination that there's going to be some sort of attack with it. Ladies and gents, we were 80 minutes into the movie. I clocked it. We were 80 minutes into the movie before I knew what the hell the point of this movie was. Because there's no mention of anything in space at all until about 80 minutes into the movie. And then you're like, oh, that's what he's going to do. If I have to wait an hour and a half to find out what the point of the movie is, I just don't consider that great. Also, it's chaotic towards the end. It's messy. It's a big fight. It is kind of fun, but it's fun in like a train wreck kind of fun, not like it's good fun. The space lasers don't make any sense at all with how they work. I mean, we had space guns in 1979 and we haven't developed them yet here in 2023. I don't really get that. There were some odd moments in this too. Like Jaws has another girl who is helping Bond and trapped in an alleyway, and he's like attacking her and choking her and then hugging her and like holding her as this parade of people walk by celebrating Carnival. And the girl like doesn't scream out once for anybody. Like she's totally silent while Jaws is basically kidnapping slash killing her. And she has 50 bystanders who, yes, are probably drunk and partying for Carnival, but they're literally there and she does nothing to speak out against this guy. Didn't make any sense at all. That again, and I combine with, why this guy just won't kill Bond, Drax, is questionable. The point where they're shooting pheasants and this guy has a gun in his hand and could just kill Bond right there. But doesn't, mind you, because I don't know, he said it wasn't sporting, but keep in mind, Bond shoots at a bird that he sees and misses it. And Drax is like, oh, you missed Mr. Bond. And then Bond said, did I? And then this sniper falls out of a tree that Drax had planted there to kill James Bond right then. So was that sporting to have a sniper hiding in a tree to try to take out Bond? Like, there's just some real questionable writing in this movie. It was fun. It's most of the time, I will say, but I mean, it's a train wreck. It's a train wreck. That's all I can think of. It's a train wreck. However, action in the movie, particularly the skydiving scene, we're going to get again some boat scenes in Venice. We got, as messy as it is, the space laser scene is kind of fun. It's action filled. Um, we get a little bit of space piloting in this one with chasing down the globes that have the virus or whatever the hell it's called, the poison in them. So we do get some pretty fun moments in here as far as action in this movie. And as a matter of fact, I am giving this movie, Moonraker, the highest action score we have given out so far. 15 out of 15. This is buoyed a lot by that skydiving scene at the beginning. The cable car scene in particular was really fun as well. There's just a few really good actiony scenes, and then sprinkled on top of that are a lot of really fun action moments as well, with people fighting and fist fighting and driving the boats and the other things as well. So I actually thought scene for scene this movie had the best action. I mean, come on, he kills an anaconda in a pool of water with the thing he shoots out of his wrist. That's just a good fight scene right there. Plus, we get to see Jaws fight, and how, I'm sorry, as little as it made sense for his character to flip like that. And he does talk once. I forgot to mention that. Jaws does talk in this film towards the end, so we do know that he can talk. But it's fun to see Jaws kicking ass as well instead of just plotting after and chasing Bond. Like he's picking up dudes and throwing them and breaking walls and bending metal and shit. It's pretty fun. So, yeah, I'm giving this a 15 out of 15 for action, and also happy for the fact that at no point, apparently, despite how it looked, Jaws lives again. So will we see him back again? I don't know. It'd be super fun if we do, but if he's a hero now, I'm not sure how that would work in the movie. It'd have to be the right setup for it, but it does look pretty fun. Okay, before we reveal our final score today, let's take a look at our favorite line or quote of the movie. There was a scene earlier in the movie at the very beginning with this Corinne lady where Bond is slowly moving his hand up her thigh. And remember, she's a pilot. And she tells him at one point, any higher and my ears will pop. And you can get the double entendre there, I think. That was going to be my line of the movie. It's a pretty good one, but I have to give it to, I believe, M. Might have been Q, but I think it was M who stole the show at the end of the movie when he has Bond and Goodhead on screen, and somebody says basically like, "My gosh, what are they doing?" And I believe it's M that says, "I think he may be attempting re-entry," talking about the spaceship that's coming to Earth, and of course, Dr. Holly Goodhead. Great lines. Okay, finishing us off today, Moonraker. Let's add up our scores 15, 18, 7, 10, 13, 6, and 2. Gonna give Moonraker a grand total of 71 points. So surprisingly, this was better than the last film, slightly. But I thought this was just into the classic category. So I do recommend you check out Moonraker, just barely though. Whoa. So that one's safe. All right, next we're going to head 2 years up to 1981 for Your Eyes Only. And we'll talk about that one on our next podcast here. Hopefully, we'll be coming your way to start next week, if I have that right. Should be dropping sometime when I'm already back in school, teaching again. But as always, I want to say thank you to everybody. And want to say also to all of our hosts again, thank you. Check out www.fondpodcast.com. And you can find us on all of your social media favorites, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Possibly soon to be coming to YouTube and Threads as well. And you can check us out, leave us some comments, leave us some reviews, tell a friend about us, follow us, subscribe to us, whatever it is that your particular podcast platform likes to use as verbiage. Do those things. Help us spread our fond empire. And as always, thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Cody in another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. We'll see you next time.